Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. I don't know where you are in this part of the world, but you're watching the Chicken Box with your host, Impeccable. My co-host, they're in traffic. At least that's what they told me. So on the Chicken Box, you never know if it's the real truth or not. If you've never tuned in before, this is powered by the Afro-American newspaper, also known as the Afro News. We have transformed into a media company now, 133 years. Happy birthday. I keep saying happy birthday because it's such an amazing feat, not just for African American owned organization, but for any organization. When you look at the statistics of how businesses thrive and survive in this landscape. But this is the Chicken Box where you can get on and speak your truth. Now, if you're from the Baltimore area, you know that the Chicken Box is 4 wings, fries, salt, pepper, ketchup. Sometimes they come as wedges. The box, I don't know why they give you that silly box. Some people wrap it in aluminum foil, but does it work? It still gets greasy. If you're hungry like me, just hold off for just a second because we got something. We have a special guest joining us today. He's a friend of the Afro. We've seen him before. Why don't we welcome everybody, Travis Mitchell, to the Chicken Box. Travis, how are you today?
I'm good, my brother. Thanks for welcoming me and
Man, it's a
inviting
new
me.
year. It's a new time. It's January flew by so quickly. We're
So
now
fast,
into February. At the
so
Afro
fast.
history is every day, but they try to when I say they, you know what I'm talking about, try to just give us a little month, a little short month at that, to say that that's the day that they're going to recognize it, but we are going to recognize it all year long. If you haven't met
Absolutely.
Travis, there's Google out there, but I like to say, first of all, he's a Morgan alumni. The Morgan State University, formerly known as Morgan State College. And he's also the senior vice president and chief content officer at MPT, which stands for Maryland Public Television. He oversees all the content creator. Before the people on there that call themselves content creators, there was Travis creating all kind of beautiful content. He has a beautiful family. He's going to tell us some other things that's really exciting. I'd rather not read a bio for somebody who can just go online and Google it when I got the guy right here in my face. And so let's just kick it off, man. It's the founder. I forgot that. You're the founder of HBCU Week, Travis. Now, don't forget the now, okay? Because I want to get into why you named it that. Because I think we never touched on that before. So he's the visionary behind the HBCU now. So why don't you give us just why that name?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share. And we started HBCU Week on MPT about 6 years ago now, right after George Floyd. And I thought it was important for us to dedicate a week of primetime programming to the HBCU experience. Maryland Public Television, I didn't feel had a history of authenticity as it related to telling stories about the Black experience through the voice of the culture. And so I thought one of the ways that we could respond to the moment was to make sure that we connected with all of our local HBCUs and then nationally air films about the HBCU experiences from around the country. So we have gotten up to 30 plus hours in prime time. I think we have shown now over 100 films on HBCU Week on MPT, and we typically do it the first week of September, last week, the second week. And it's in alignment with the National HBCU Week as designated by the White House. Every president, including the current president since Jimmy Carter, has designated the first or second week or third week of September as National HBCU Week. We named our week, we converted it to HBCU Week now because we took what we were doing locally and we were able, through a grant from the now defunct Corporation for Public Broadcasting, we were able to expand HBCU Week celebrations to over 17 PBS stations across the country. These stations happen to share markets with almost 99% of the HBCUs across the country because there's some very large statewide stations. And so what we were able to do is provide films to these stations to run while we were doing our celebration in Maryland. They were doing the same thing nationwide. And then this past year, we provided the anchor film for HBCU Week, which was Becoming Thurgood, which tells the stories of Baltimore-owned Thurgood Marshall from his native upbringing in Baltimore and his travels through HBCUs, Lincoln and Howard University en route to the Supreme Court. Now, all of this content can be found on hbcuweeknow.com. It can be found at HBCU Week Now, YouTube, and Instagram. And Kevin, we've had just an explosion of viewership. So our platforms now have exceeded 10 million viewers, impressions. We have 25,000 subscribers on YouTube. We have 22,000 on Instagram. And this is a little over a year. There's been 200 pieces of original content that's been produced about HBCU experience on our platforms. And we've won 3 Emmys and 12 Telly Awards. So people should check it out. We're excited because it's powerful storytelling, compelling storytelling, featuring stories that were produced by our people, by our HBCU graduates, and some extraordinary students have produced content that's featured on our platforms and our YouTube channel. We did a HBCU Week Student Film Festival, and we did a national competition, and we have featured those films on our YouTube channel. So there were 10 winners. Each one of the winners received $5,000, and they hailed from 3 universities. Hampton, Howard, and Spelman had the most winners. And so you can find their work on our HBCU YouTube channel, HBCU Week Now YouTube channel. There's a playlist with the winners, but check out our platforms. It's really to make sure that we celebrate and tell the undertold stories of how HBCUs have shaped America.
Man, if you just tuned in, this is the Chicken Box with Travis Mitchell, one of the original content creators, putting some good content in a year. I mean, I think it's just the awareness and how when especially HBCU grads discover the content, they are going to just jump right in. Jay Jackson, how you doing? We understand good. Traffic was good. I told him, look, turn all the lights green and let him get on to the show so he wouldn't miss our beautiful guest, Travis Mitchell. Welcome.
Travis, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Jay. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, Jay, your mic's a little low, so this is this is live TV, people. This is just how it goes. So we fight through. We're talking to Travis Mitchell, the founder of HBCU Week Now, which will be very soon. I think actually it's this coming Tuesday, the 24th.
Well, yeah. So you'd asked the question earlier about why the now, and that is because we wanted to make sure that content was available on demand about the HBCU experience. Not only are we doing feature films and lifestyle entertainment content on the site, but we're also hoping that it is a clearinghouse for resources so that soon on our website, for instance, people will be able to go and be connected to every HBCU website in the country. You'll be able to see their recruitment videos and information about how to apply to both undergraduate and graduate school. And I think most importantly, we'll have their KPIs, their impact metrics listed so that it destroys the myths about whether or not our students prepare its graduates to be competitive in the workplace. We know that HBCUs produce the lion's share of teachers, lawyers, engineers, STEM majors, and the list goes on and on and on. So it's important for our community to value the treasures that HBCUs are. And then we wanted the platforms to amplify their stories. And so here in Baltimore, we're excited because next Tuesday, we are kicking off the CIAA tournament with HBCU Week Day Now. HBCU Week Now Day. And it is a day that really celebrates our history, our culture, and our contemporary relevance. We get started at 8:30 with a screening of Inside the CIAA Her Story, which tells the story of the pioneering women leaders who helped prompt and push the Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association to national prominence, especially under the current leadership of Commissioner Jackie McWilliams Parker. It tells her story, and it tells the story of the legends who made the CIAA possible. That starts at 8:30. These are free events at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum. People can register at hbcueatnow.com. We encourage everybody to get a seat. Food will be served at each one of our venues, at each one of our events. And at 11:30, we do Becoming Thurgood. It's the story of Justice Marshall's rise from Baltimore through Lincoln to Howard, as I said earlier, but it's in his voice. It is one of the few films that have received endorsement by the Marshall family, who are featured in the film. The goal was to help a young generation who've never heard his voice see how this man's mindset was transformed by the likes of Langston Hughes and Kwame Nkrumah at Lincoln, and then under the tutelage of Charles Hamilton Houston at Howard Law School. One man helped change the course of America, and most importantly, you hear him talk about his future hopes and aspirations and how he believes every American citizen should remain engaged in the effort to ensure that our democracy remains open for all to participate and enjoy the benefits of full American citizenry. And that's what he fought for. And it is a call to action for the nation. And then we close out from 2:30 to 5:30 with our HBCU Film Festival, which features the student leaders that I was mentioning before. People can see their films, and then all of the content that our PBS station partners produced will also be on display in the afternoon. And one breaking news item that I'm happy to share here is that we have just added the film Allergic to Failure. It is the story of Robert Covington's 10 plus year MBA journey from Tennessee State University. So we're really excited about the content that we're presenting, and we just want folks to come, have breakfast, lunch, and some afternoon refreshments on us. And it is our way to help amplify the HBCU mission and history and legacy during the first day of the CIAA tournament here in Baltimore.
Man, I am super excited. It's like a must see. You remember back in school when you used to fall asleep when they used to put the film in the film machine? I might be dating myself because some of you guys watching is like, what? The film machine? That was the time to go to sleep. The teacher, that was the time for them to take a break because they didn't want to teach. They roll that big audio visual projector into the classroom. But this story of Frederick Douglass, this is a must see for all kids. But I'm going to say for African American kids or kids of a people of color or Black descent, a must see, even if we have to bring it home as parents because the schools are not always going to give them the education that they need. So the added bonus that you've even created a project like this to even go back to the mindset of a person before he had to achieve this, global, if we call it success at the time. I don't know how they got the word out globally, but to us, he's been a global hero. And when you get after you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and we were at Goucher College. The film is being screened at over 50 universities around the country, and we are facing our challenges because in some instances, for the first time ever, universities are having to screen the film with their general counsel to see, particularly PWIs, if they're running afoul over Trump mandates on DEI. We don't think this is DEI. We think this is history, but we're still running into those challenges. And so we are forming a partnership. Lincoln University is co-hosting this screening on Tuesday, February 24th, along with the African American Association of Museums. We are looking to screen this film in an additional 2,000 locations. And here's why. At Goucher College last night, when we were doing the screening, people knew about the Thurgood Marshall they read about in the history books. And these are older white people who came to this, but they had no idea the impact that he had in dismantling systemic racism before he got to the court. They knew Brown v. Board of Education, but they didn't know how instrumental he was in the 40s in dismantling voting rights violations and making sure that people had the right to vote. And then it was through the protest movements in the 50s and 60s that led the way for the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. But Marshall's cases served as precedent for later legislation. And so it was really, really, really important, the role that he played in the nation. And then as we talked about his global influence, Marshall also, remember, he was at Lincoln and he studied with Langston Hughes, but also Kwame Nkrumah, who was the founder and the first president of what now has become known as Ghana. Marshall, in his later life, before he ascended to the Supreme Court, there's a almost a decade period or more where he was going to newly freed African nations and helping them write their constitutions. We touch on that in the film, but we really didn't get a chance to build that out. But that is a fascinating look at how one man from Baltimore not only helped change the nation forever, but he had a global impact that indeed changed the world.
Absolutely. Jay Jackson jumping. I went to Ghana and I saw that Kwame, that whole
that museum.
The whole it's like a whole compound.
It's powerful.
It's more than a museum. If you ever get a chance to go to Ghana, that is like a must see, and you really should tour that place. You been there, Jay?
I've not been to Ghana, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, I went, Kevin, and the compound, as you mentioned, was powerful. What a lot of people don't know is the African American Museum, the Smithsonian's African American Museum for History and Culture, was modeled after the Ghanaian palace there for the president. It's almost an exact replica. And then if you look at, there was another museum over there that pays homage to W.E.B. Du Bois, who actually was in Ghana and penned a letter to be read by his wife at the March on Washington in '63. It's one of the last notes that he had read, where he talks about believing in the potential of humanity. And I just find Ghana to be a fascinating place, and to make sure that people understand Marshall's connection to these African nations, particularly to Kwame Nkrumah, was one of the critical points we wanted to make in the movie. So HBCUs have had an impact on global culture, global affairs, the global economy. And we really hope that people come out on Tuesday, February 24th. They can go to our website at hbcuweeknow.com. They can register for the festival, and they can interface with all and engage with all of our content on our social media platforms. Now is the time to really continue to tell our stories.
Our stories have been continued to be told for over 133 years. If you've never heard of the Afro, go to afro.com. We got 133 years of inspiring, educating, informing, and uplifting Black people all over the world for a decade. Well, not a decade, for centuries. You want to say a decade sounds old. 10 days sounds old. And this time, you go viral for 10 days. That's like a record. After 2 days, they forgot what the last story was. But Jay, we're talking to Travis Mitchell, founder of HBCU Week Now. Jump in. I know you've been itching to get in here through that traffic.
All right. So I apologize. Is my audio okay now? Does it sound all right now? Okay, it's good. Okay. Travis, thank you for joining us. I apologize for my lateness. One thing I want to talk to you about is your time with Maryland Public Television. You have to say the least, a storied career with them. Working with them and the projects that you worked on, you mentioned obviously the Thurgood Marshall project is sort of top of mind at this point. My question is, have you seen a increased interest in these projects and what public television is doing very specifically from the Black community because of the political climate? Because we're seeing this sort of removal of Black history, or this tamp down, or for lack of a better phrase, a very much of whitewashing of African American history. Have you seen sort of a reverse kind of effect of young Black folks or older Black folks kind of doubling down and wanting to get more information? Have you seen an increase in interest?
Yes. So let me speak to MPT, and then let me speak to what's happening around the country. So I think we have seen our viewership around the country. Linear TV viewership is down, commercial and public media, linear. In PBS, those declines have been drastic in some markets, but MPT leads the nation in terms of the least amount of linear TV erosion. In fact, we have actually seen some years where we have picked up TV audience. And I think part of that is because in Maryland, Because if you look at our programming over the last 6 years since I've arrived, we have diversified our programming and we feature a lot of independent producers. Many of them hail from the area. We always have hard hitting documentaries, and we believe in curating content that is made by storytellers who understand the subject matter that they are sharing. So if you are an African American or a person of color, we want to make sure that you are telling your stories with authenticity. And so you have to be immersed in the culture in order to be able to do that. I think that has led to us picking up viewership and support in a time like this from the African American community. Now, nationwide, the similar things can be said in certain stations with certain demographics. So, for instance, there's been an overwhelming amount of support coming to PBS stations in the midst of the recession, and not recession, but the rescission package to eliminate funding for CPB. But it's those stations like MPT who not only back up their content with an engagement strategy and an education strategy, but who are really listening to and engaging the community. And we have to do an even better job of that. But the stations that are kind of mimicking what we're doing with HBCU Week and Running Marshall and our Becoming Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman Visions of Freedom, those stations are enjoying an increase in viewership and support because people, our community included, believe that having safe spaces and outlets for producers like Stanley Nelson and for us and for me and for people like Henry Louis Gates, if it weren't for PBS, I'm not so sure that all of those stories would have made it across the finish line and be distributed to TV households across the country. So, PBS was chartered to serve underserved communities. Many of us grew up, I learned how to read watching PBS. Back in the South, we call soap opera stories. So when I heard the theme music for The Young and the Restless come on, my grandma, I knew she was going to send me to my room. We didn't have but 4 channels, and one of those channels was PBS. So when she sent me back, I learned how to read as I was driving, taking a drive down Sesame Street. They make a right corner at the electric company. And I didn't know Morgan Freeman as Driving Miss Daisy. I knew him as Easy Reader. So, we in the Black community have had a long history with PBS. My job is to remind PBS to not neglect the communities that grew up valuing the service as we have gotten older. So this is a pivotal moment. We're on the precipice. And so I think the stations that double down on communities of color and do engagement and reflect the voices in their community are the stations that are going to fare well as we move ahead. The stations that have neglected doing so, do so at their peril.
Thank you.
Boom. That was a mic drop. I think we can leave now, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's super interesting to see that sort of reverse kind of situation happening. And it's good to hear that people are recognizing this shortfall and not just going, well, it's a shortfall and then I'll just move on, but instead figuring out ways to help invest further into public television, and whether that's through giving their time, which is obviously incredibly important, of actually viewing the material, or monetarily, which is obviously incredibly important to keep the particular programming going. So that's good to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we're going to be to that point. We have not been overt or expressive, but in these times, I am under extreme amount of pressure to come up with sustainability funds, as all media outlets are under pressure to raise resources to continue to do what we're doing. So on our HBCU Now platform, soon you'll see an invitation for people to partner with us in small ways, where we simply want them to give what they have to give. Our platforms are public; they're nonprofit, and so we need help in continuing to crank out these documentaries, national documentaries like Becoming Thurgood Marshall and Becoming Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman Visions of Freedom. They're not cheap. We are grateful to be in the state of Maryland, where we've been able to produce these 3 documentaries thanks to an allocation from the Maryland General Assembly under the leadership of former House Speaker and Adrian Jones and current bipartisan support we get in the General Assembly. and under our governor, Wes Moore. So we're unique in the PBS system. And I raise that because it very well could be that MPT becomes that protected space because we're protected by the laws of the state of Maryland and we're supported by the people of Maryland, that we can continue to bring these national stories and present them to national audiences where other states like Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama have been muted. And so we're at a moment where what we do at MPT is not only important for the state of Maryland and for the Black community in Maryland, but it's also important for the nation.
Okay, so just quickly, and then I'm going to give it back to my co-host. So other states don't actually have a public-private setup for their public television at all. It is just a private funding private funding from its audience or internal funding, and that's it. But Maryland is actually different.
No, well, what we're seeing is in places that did have the public-private model where it was donor-based and state-supported and federal supported, when the federal money went away, and the way PBS works is the federal government didn't directly fund PBS. The federal government directly funded the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Right,
They took they took the money away from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and so that leaves stations to have to figure out a way to pay for PBS programming. Okay. And so in certain markets like Alabama or Arkansas, namely, Alabama was thinking about it. What certain state legislatures were deciding to do was eliminate the state subsidy. And so not only did you not have the national, but then they were taking the state subsidy. So if you were dependent upon a federal and a national bucket of money, there's not enough donor base in some of these states to raise and offset that loss. And so that's the crisis that the public media system, the TV stations in particularly are facing, because radio is more of a donor supported medium. In TV, it's a smaller fraction of our revenue model. So in Maryland, again, we're fortunate because the General Assembly sees the benefit in investing in MPT, but in some red states, I can't say that's the case. So they are scrambling to try to figure out how to keep the doors open. So if we're able to bring to them engagement and content, and one note that we have been using, and it's somewhat of a sad note that I have to use, but I had to remind certain red state stations that they were safe with HBCU programming because the Trump administration did not deem HBCUs to be DEI. And the mad science behind that, or the political, if you want to call it, dubious nature of that, is because the way the HBCUs were created was explicitly so Black people wouldn't go to PWIs. So in a strange, ironic twist, HBCUs were prevented from being labeled DEI because what the agenda was is to make sure that we continue to drive people of color and Black students just to HBCUs and not to be able to be on the flagship PWI campuses. So I had to remind stations that if you're afraid of your DEI programming to be rolled back, your HBCU programming is a safe space. Now, my mission is to create partners to amplify the stories of HBCUs everywhere. But we must remember that the students at Morgan who protested in the 40s and the 50s and didn't get the same acclaim as students of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and who integrated the Woolworth stores in Greensboro, the Greensboro 4, we've been doing that at Morgan since the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But the point that I'm making is that the protest movement that came out of HBCU, SNCC was formed from HBCU students on the campus of Shaw University. Their fight was to make sure that students of color could go anywhere they want, eat anywhere they want, be educated anywhere they want, live anywhere they want. So HBCUs have always stood for an inclusive democracy. And so I find it very ironic that I had to pull out the data point that HBCUs were not labeled DEI because they are deemed safe spaces by the Trump administration, whereas other content, other material was found to be unacceptable. It's just a strange, ironic twist of fate.
Right, because there's a whole thing of them being fine with HBCUs, but not predominantly minority colleges, which is a very different thing. And so they were taking funding from them and giving some of that funding to HBCUs, trying to sort of, it seemed like trying to create a rift between those two groups of institutions in an interesting way.
But I will say that the origins of that funding model, HBCUs actually suffered under that funding model, including under the Obama administration. And I need to explain that a little bit to the listeners and the viewers. I'm not an expert on the subject, but having been in North Carolina, let me tell you what was starting to happen. HBCUs have been historically and legally discriminated against. We know that here in Maryland with the settlement of the $577 million lawsuit that Morgan and our late president, Dr. Earl S. Richardson, was the leader behind because of the historic underfunding of Maryland state-supported HBCUs. That had to be remedied. So in the South and in many areas, what was starting to happen is that schools that were trying to find their niche were tapping into federal funding because their percentage of minority student was increasing, but they could not say that they were historically disenfranchised and historically discriminated against. So it was, while I believe in funding for all schools, for all students, who, especially schools that have increased opportunities for people of color, if you were not historically disadvantaged, the reason why that's an important designation is because where our schools hurt the most was from duplication of programs and a lack of investment in infrastructure. So if your infrastructure was neglected and you have program duplication, the schools had limited market share. So a school should not receive the same amount of funding that the HBCUs receive because they were not suffering at the same level. Physical plant was not suffering, and they were not suffering from a duplication of programs. So as long as we understand that distinction, we understand that under this current administration, the one side was played against the other, but the historical designation was something that we always have to keep in mind because HBCUs, the pie was diluted for them. Even under past Democratic administrations, they diluted the pie, playing the HBCUs versus the predominantly minority serving institutions. And that was never the correct funding formula to remedy past injustices for HBCUs.
Thank you for explaining that, because I think a lot of people don't know that there is a difference, right? They just say there's PWIs and then HBCUs and that's it. But this predominantly minority colleges also sits in the middle in this, I don't want to say weird, but sort of nebulous zone that a lot of people just aren't fully aware of. So I've talked enough, so I'm going to let you go.
Well, no, I mean, I think this is an important point because, like, for instance, in North Carolina, North Carolina A&T became the largest HBCU in the country, and they were starting to build out physical plant. Well, right there in Greensboro, University of North Carolina at Greensboro received a minority institution designation because the number of Black students and minority students grew exponentially. Well, if UNC Greensboro physical plant had never been neglected historically by the state of North Carolina, and UNC Greensboro had never gone through and suffered through program duplication like A&T had, A&T now is reaching this level of success. And in order to dilute the population of A&T, you boost efforts at UNC Greensboro. That is not fair to A&T. That's not just. You have to address the past. You have to remedy the past underfunding of an HBCU like an A&T in order for them to be able to compete without using their growth funds that they just received. You can't cannibalize your growth funds and have to compete. So that's what this whole thing has been about. It's been the historic discrimination against HBCUs. And guys, this is why I'm passionate about this. It all comes from, Kevin knows, it comes from my experience at Morgan as an undergraduate student, where in 1990, we decided to protest because we found out that Morgan had been discriminated against for 40 years. Our argument, our sit-in was not against our president, Earl S. Richardson, at the time. It was the largest protest in the student protest in the history of Maryland, then and now. And it was a 6-day sit-in followed by a 40-mile walk to Annapolis and a hunger strike. What were we trying to do? Raise attention to this one data point. And I'll close here. For 40 years, Morgan had been on the negative end of its fair share of a state appropriation. And get this, over a 40-year period, Morgan only received a little more than $500,000 in deferred maintenance to upkeep their physical plant. That is extraordinary. So buildings crumble over time if you don't make investment in maintaining the building. So now you can't attract students because the dormitories are neglected. The on-campus structure is neglected. That has to be addressed by legislative action. And that's what our protest was for, to demand now, not in the future, now that you begin to address it. So we as students saw a 25-year blueprint for Morgan, where the administration had talked about redeveloping those campus structures, but the state of Maryland had to make a commitment to making that happen. And so we like to say, you can find the documentary on our YouTube channel called 6 Days, but it was about how to move that forward. And as a result, we were the catalyst for what became over $1.5 billion in state appropriated funding to change the physical plant of Morgan. It was because that 25-year plan had to be expedited. And then the state made that commitment. And when the lawsuit came on board, it settled for another $577 million on behalf of all of the HBCUs. So that's why a platform like HBCU Week Now is really, really, really important, because not only does it talk about and celebrate the culture, but it preserves the history.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. That was an excellent explanation.
Absolutely. That was better than any class at Morgan. Thanks, Travis.
You're going to get people in trouble.
Because, I mean, the stories, the Afro has been great storytellers, and Maryland Public Television and you and HBCU Week Now are taking these stories as well and making films and really giving a platform to the information so that we can discover what we didn't know. Because I always say, you know what you don't know until you know something new, right?
Yes.
Then once you know something new, you can make a change. Keyword can. Will you is the question once you have the new information, or will you continue the same way that you were? This is the Chicken Box, powered by the 133-year-old Afro-American News. Go to afro.com. We're not owned by anybody. No one controls our content or what we say, or do we have to run it up the flagpole? I mean, to a point. Let's be clear on that. But to a point, it's going to be Black content, unfiltered. You're not going to find this conversation with Travis many places because many people don't want to really talk about it. We also have a mission going on called the 133 campaign. You know, we're raising $133,000 for journalists, for our young people, to keep the newsroom and real journalism relevant. Nobody's going to do it for us. Listen, they're not coming to save us. We have to begin to invest in our community like other communities do. And that's why they're thriving, is because everybody puts in a little bit to make the big dream happen. So just go to afro.com and you can click on it. It'll be a nice little button there that you can click, anywhere from 13 to 33 to 133 to 1,033. Whatever your heart leads you to do, we will accept every donation. Just thank you for just playing your part and helping us keep the storytelling going over the years. Travis, it's been a minute. You're always a guest. Not a guest. You're a family here at the Afro. I wasn't gonna say a guest like we had a hotel. Like, come to the hotel, Afro Hotel. Maybe it'll be something we do. But you did mention something backstage. HBCU Week is next week. The CIAA is next week. You guys are kicking it off. But you said it was something, a family special that you wanted to share, that like a first, a father-daughter, daddy-daughter situation.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. So my daughter and I are Morgan grads. I graduated in 92. She graduated in 2023. And we had the privilege of earning an Emmy together for a documentary film we did, actually called Inside the CIAA Impact, last year, where we chronicled the CIAA's impact on local businesses, Black businesses, and the Black community. And so we won an Emmy for it. And so we're going to be honored at the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, the MEAC, postseason tournament as Morgan's Alums of the Year. And it's a great honor for us. And the funny thing is, I was a basketball player at Morgan, left that to pursue my role as a student leader. My GPA, unfortunately, was higher than my points per game or assists per game, so you're not going to see anything there. But I just find that it's interesting that I'm able to go back to the postseason tournament and be honored for contributions to our community. That means the most to me and to my daughter, who is an excellent filmmaker. She's won 2 Emmys and 4 Telly Awards, and she's on her way to a bright future. She's Morgan made, as I am. And so it's a way for us to say thank you to Morgan and to say thank you to our community for believing in our work and celebrating our storytelling talents.
Absolutely. That's fantastic, everybody.
Awesome.
Share this broadcast. Here at the Afro, we give you all your flowers while you're alive. And just being on here with you today, we're going to have some off-camera conversations because we've been dealing with some other people on some stories that need to really be told about the Afro, and they're just dragging their feet. So maybe we might have to do a partnership together, because when I tell you the content and the stories that could be told together, I mean, it would impact the world. I mean, you would be blown away. You know, those little, like when they said when Hidden Figures first came, and those things that you're now finding out about Black history, about what we actually have done that they've been trying to hide all these years. It's gonna blow your mind, and it's great. It's good TV, like they say. So, Travis,
Absolutely.
Jay Jackson, always a pleasure. And remember, call a senior. They'd love to hear from you. Send something, send some groceries. Don't text them, okay? Just call them. Say hi to auntie or to your aunt or to your grandmother if they're still alive. And just do a random act of kindness. I'm telling you, it goes a long way to get out of your own space and be unselfish just for a few minutes a day. I say that every week because I think it's very important that somebody that you need to think about before they pass away, and you boo-hooing and said, I could have called them right when I heard Impeccable say it. Until next time, Travis, HBCU week now. Next Tuesday, they kicking it off. Go right to the website, hbcuweeknow.com. Have fun at the CIAAs. It's in Baltimore. I heard they might be renewing it and keeping it here just a little while longer. So we have it while we have the CIAA tournament and the whole week of festivities. Let's just support it and make it the best event yet. It's 2026, y'all, in case you haven't checked. Get working on your dreams and goals. Until next time, Travis, Jay Jackson, and for Dr. Draper, who couldn't be with us, the CEO of the Afro, we say thank you for supporting the Afro. Thank you for supporting HBCU Week Now and everything else that you do, even if it's just a like on Instagram. Sometimes you think money is everything, but sometimes just a little subscribe button or a like button goes as far away as $1. Until next time, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.